We are going on the clock, presented by Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe. The NBA draft on Thursday, and we have a very special mock for you here on HQ. Chris Hassel joined by Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander of Ion College basketball fame. Norlander ranked him, and Gary is going to draft him. Matt, when looking at your rankings, and we're going to take a look at the top of your rankings right now, a bit surprised that I didn't see Chet Holmgren or Jabari Smith number one. You're going Paolo Banchero. Why?
A few reasons, the biggest being that Paolo Banchero, of all the names you see listed here, the player who has been proven to be the best for the longest time and over the most consistent period, I'm talking about dating back to being 15, 16 years old, is Paolo Banchero. Paolo Banchero was the best freshman in college basketball last season. He led Duke to the Final Four. He has the best combination of size, skill, offensive acumen. Other players you can make the case for. And while the top three in some order has been Jabari, Chet, Paolo, usually in that order, as GP and I talked about on the most recent edition of Ion College Basketball, I happen to believe that it will be inevitable that those three bigs will not wind up being the three best players in this draft years down the road. They make sense to draft 1, 2, 3 now, but that doesn't mean the future is going to hold that actual reality. For me, Banchero has the best package. He's the most NBA ready. He would be my favorite to win Rookie of the Year no matter who he gets drafted to and wherever he gets drafted. And I think defensively, he actually has not just room to grow, but the ability to do so. So it should not be, as I said on my recent mock draft at CBSSports.com, guys, having Paolo Banchero as the number one prospect should not be a contrarian take. Yes, it's trending toward Jabari Smith, but it is not completely unreasonable or hard to imagine that Banchero is both immediately the best player in this rookie class and grows and proves to be that 10 years from now.
Yeah, Smith has been the favorite to go number one overall. Recently, as a couple of weeks ago, he was like minus 400 to go number one. Now it's pretty close between Jabari Smith and Chet Holmgren to go number one. Gary, let's get into your mock. Matt's going to focus on the prospects. Gary focusing on the prospect and maybe more importantly, the fit in particular for an NBA team. Who do you have the Magic taking number one, Gary?
Chet Holmgren out of Gonzaga. And like you mentioned, Hassel, I'm very aware that Jabari Smith is the betting favorite to be the number one pick. But I do believe that Orlando is, looking at least two players and possibly more. The two obvious ones being Jabari Smith and Chet Holmgren. For me, Holmgren's just got the most potential, biggest upside of anybody in this draft. I understand the concerns. He's a one-position center, and those guys aren't that valuable anymore unless they are true superstars. It should be noted, the reigning MVP of the NBA is a center, and the runner-up for the MVP award, also a center. So the idea that centers can't be special, that's nonsensical. But they need to be special to be worth taking at the top of a draft. And simply put, I think Holmgren can be. Will he be able to guard in space terrifically? Maybe not. But I've talked to multiple evaluators in recent weeks who said they think he'll be good enough at it. And the other stuff is incredible. Elite level rim protector, can reliably, make jumpers from the perimeter, can play make on the perimeter. He's a unique prospect, and he's not without flaws, his body being another one. But if he becomes everything that seems possible for him to become, I think ultimately he's the best player from this draft.
Opinions on him have been flying fast and furious. It's only going to get more as we get closer to the draft night. I talked to an evaluator on Saturday who said, I don't know what quite to make of Holmgren. He could not have played in the NBA Finals series that you just saw between the Celtics and Warriors. Where would you have played him? How would you have played him? How would he have stayed on the floor for a long period of time? I love the pick from GP here. He'd actually team up with Jalen Suggs, who he played with in high school. But ultimately, Holmgren, his strengths are on the defensive end in terms of being a rim protector and making up space. He can bring up the ball. He can shoot. How much will he be tasked and asked to do the things that he does well at the college level, what he did well at the high school level, at the pro level? It'll be really intriguing there. I am lowest on Holmgren of the big three. To me, he's got the lowest floor by far. He also, you could argue, has the highest ceiling, so GP going there at one with him. It does make sense, but I do think wherever he goes, he's the big gamble. No one really quite knows how he'll fit and how he'll be used at the next level next year, let alone what he'll look like in the NBA will look like, Chris, 5 years from now.
This is the fourth mock draft we've done here on CBS Sports HQ, and I think it's 4 different mock GMs, all of them took Chet Holmgren number 1. He is still not the favorite to go number 1, but getting closer, plus 145. Jabari Smith minus 180 to go number 1. Gary, is that where you're going with the Thunder at 2?
Jabari Smith is, I think, going no lower than second in this draft. And like you mentioned, possibly first. He's obviously a terrific one-and-done prospect out of Auburn. Father played in the NBA and professionally overseas for a long time. So he has that pedigree, which is something that is extremely valued by front offices. You know, whether you look at, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Jaren Jackson Jr., some of the best players we have in the NBA right now are the sons of professional athletes, and Jabari Smith, obviously, he checks that box. 6'10" athlete, shot above 40% from three-point range. He's got some playmaking ability, but that still needs to be developed. He wasn't somebody that Auburn could just throw the ball to and say, go make plays and create opportunities for yourself and others. That's not really a strong suit right now, but at worst, he's a 6'10" athlete who can, be used as a switchable forward, guard multiple positions, and reliably, make catch and shoot jumpers and one dribble pull-ups. He's a terrific prospect with a great reputation, and that's why he's the guy that I can't see falling out of the top 2. Chet Holmgren, yeah, I could see falling out of the top 2. I don't think Jabari Smith is waiting around in that green room very long on Thursday night.
Talked to an NBA scout about a week ago. I said, is there any scenario possible where Jabari falls below 2? He said the only way that happens is if Orlando really pulls the rug out from everyone, takes Paolo first, and then there's a feeling that Presti will take Holmgren if they're there at 2. But it will be very hard if that's the case not to take Jabari at 2. GP just laid out basically everything you need to know about his game. He's got a tremendously high floor, wonderful teammate, great size, great shooting form, efficient shooter. His rise over the past 6 months has been incredible there. I do love his potential outcome. And I was talking to another evaluator over the weekend, like the baseline for Jabari Smith, barring injury, his baseline is 10-year starter in the NBA. He just seems to be about as safe of a prospect as you could ask to draft in this year's crop here. So yeah, GP. I'd honestly be shocked if he fell below 2, but if he did, it would have to be that Banchero goes to Orlando, and then Oklahoma City is so enamored with Chet they just refuse to pass on him, and that's how it happens. But that seems unlikely.
Matt, your top prospect is still on Gary's board here. Paolo Banchero, ranked number 1 by Matt Norlander. Is that where you're going with the Rockets at 3, Gary?
Yeah, to me, Houston's got the easiest job at the top of this draft. You just sit there at 3, and you've got a list of Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith, Paolo Banchero, and whichever one is available when you're on the clock is the one that you take in this mock draft, and most, that will be Paolo Banchero, who a year ago I had projected as the number 1 pick in the draft, and he really didn't do anything to make me move off of him as much as Jabari Smith showed his unique skill set, and Chet Holmgren I became a fan of over the past year for all of the things he can do. Banchero is big and strong and skilled, and you could drop him into an NBA game tonight. I'm with Norlander on this one. I do think he'll be the favorite to be Rookie of the Year, and it won't matter if he's picked first, second, third, or where. He'll be the guy holding that trophy at the end of the season.
I love Banchero's combination of skill, size, touch. I mean, he really does have the ability to catch the ball at the top of the key, put it on the deck, utilize the spin move, get into the post, get out of that, twirl, get to the rim, bully himself there, and then lightly kiss it off the glass for a layup. There's just not a lot of guys who have his complete package as an offensive player. In fact, I think the only reason why Banchero is not the favorite to be the number 1 pick is he still has questions on the defensive end in terms of ability and really more desire. He did play alongside 2 awesome defenders in Wendell Moore Jr. and Mark Williams, so I think sometimes those knocks are a little overstated. But yeah, love his game. He's number 1 on my board. Houston will be absolutely thrilled with any of these. But like if Banchero's sitting there at 3, you can have this amazing situation where you draft a player who could be best, and you didn't even have to worry about deciding between the other 2. Rockets find themselves in a really good spot coming into this draft.
Yeah, and as Gary said, easy situation for the Rockets, you would think. Whoever falls to them, one of those 3 guys, you got to make that pick. The Kings at 4, where things start to get a little bit more hairy and more unpredictable. Gary?
I had them selecting Jaden Ivey, but it is interesting that as we are now in the week of the draft, Jaden Ivey is on record saying he has not worked out for the Kings and he has not met with the Kings. And some of that could be his agent pulling strings. I say this as respectfully as I can say it, but the Sacramento franchise doesn't have a great reputation. And there's some thought that if you are an elite prospect like this, you might want to go anywhere, literally anywhere other than Sacramento. So perhaps they're more comfortable going 5, 6, 7 to another franchise than they are going 4 to Sacramento. And that's the motivation for not meeting with the Kings. But if I'm Sacramento, that doesn't really matter to me. You know, players don't get to pick where they're going to play. You pick where they're going to play, at least out of the draft. And, you know, Ivey projects, in my mind, as the 4th best prospect available. He's a guard with size, explosive athleticism who, really attacks the rim violently the way Russell Westbrook or John Wall did in their prime. I think he's a special player, and if I'm Sacramento and those first 3 guys are gone, that's who I'm taking.
This is going to be so fascinating here. Sacramento has Davion Mitchell and De'Aaron Fox, and if you're Sacramento, you need to draft the best player available. I love what Ivey brings. I think he's got great potential. He's a top 3 athlete in this draft as far as I'm concerned. The shot, I think, is good enough. The defensive capability, I think, is good enough. You see, I have Ivey 6. We'll get to why I like Mathurin a bit more in a few here. But his capability to take over games in bursts is undeniable. The reason why I have him 6 is there were times, many times last season, when you watched Purdue play, and it was Travion Williams who was the best player on the floor, not Jaden Ivey. And Matt Painter is one of the best coaches in college basketball. I think he did a pretty good overall job with an interesting roster last season. Purdue was a really, really good team. But with Ivey, I kind of partly feel like it's going to be fit. So if he winds up going 4 to Sacramento, and we've seen instances in the past where agents will withhold their guy from doing a workout with a team and the team will take him anyway. That could absolutely happen here with Sacramento. But if that happens, how does that help or stunt Ivey's growth? Would they have to move one of these guys eventually? Like Davion Mitchell and De'Aaron Fox already being there would make for a crowded point guard / combo guard room, if you will. Wherever Ivey goes, that's among my most interesting plot points in the top 10 on draft night.
The Pistons come up at 5, and Keegan Murray is the favorite to go there out of Iowa. Did not see Keegan Murray on Matt Norlander's ranking of the top 10 prospects. Gary?
Well, I think that's a mistake, but we can get to that later. I've got him going 5th here. I think he's tremendous. He's got great size as a switchable forward, has shown the ability to make shots from 3 and score at an extremely high level. I understand he's older than some other guys who are available here, and I'm sure that played some role in Norlander's evaluation, but I'm somebody who's not afraid of picking 21-year-olds or 22-year-olds. Like, those guys get better too, and I suspect Keegan Murray is going to be a high-level NBA guy.
For more on Keegan Murray's journey to the association, here is Road to Draft Day presented by Jeep.
My next chapter, I'm excited for. I've been challenged my whole life. Going into something new is nothing different for me. I'm just excited for what's next. This could be a different step in my life. I'm Keegan Murray. This is my road to the draft. It's not going to be easy. I'm going to have to earn everything.
Are you ready for the lead?
Yes, of course. I've been ready for this my whole life.
Swish it. Shot, Keegan. Good shot, Chris.
When I first started playing basketball, probably was around when I was 3. There's videos of me on a VHS tape playing on a little tight suit with my brother.
Woo, Keegan, that was a 3-pointer, buddy.
My childhood, I felt like was really good just because I had parents that had supported me in what I was doing. Growing up, I knew that it was a dream of mine to play in the league. Throughout high school, I really Just wanted to play on a scholarship in college. I didn't know where that was going to take me, but I knew that I had a chance to be really good with my size and athleticism and my versatility and things like that. I made the decision to enter the draft a couple weeks after the season. Thought that this was the best step and the best opportunity for me at the end of my sophomore season to have a chance to play in the league.
I am no regular citizen. Do you understand what you're witnessing? You cannot tell what the difference is. I want it all and I'm winning it.
I just want to go to the best team that'll fit my culture, my personality, and just a place where I could strive in.
I keep on moving it out for me. Just do it and stop at our talking G.
Just hearing my name on draft night is going to bring a lot of emotions because of all the hard work that has contributed to me being at this point in my life. It's going to be surreal seeing the guys that you've admired for a while, being able to compete against them has just been my goal in life.
I gotta go for the goal. I need to switch up the mode.
The team that drafts me, what they're getting out of me is a person that's just going to work as hard as possible on the basketball court and give everything they got on the court, but off the court. My goal my rookie season is to win Rookie of the Year. I know there's obviously a lot of guys that want that title. There's going to be a lot of competition, and I know that it's not going to be easy. I'm going to have to earn everything that's given to me.
I want it now. I gotta rise up. Rise up. I want it now. I gotta rise up.
Keegan Murray goes number 5 to the Pistons in our mock draft with Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander. Gary is drafting them. Matt Norlander ranking the prospects. And Jabari Smith, the only one that lines up here. Smith goes second to the Thunder, and Matt Norlander had Smith ranked number 2 overall. Chet Holmgren, who went 1, ranked number 5 on Matt Norlander's board. Our on-the-clock mock draft presented by Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe. Here are Matt Norlander's best available players. We're 5 picks in to Gary Parrish's mock draft, and Matt Norlander has a couple of top 5 players still on the board there, Shaedon Sharpe and Bennedict Mathurin, with the Pacers coming up here at 6. Chris Hassel joined by Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish. Gary is making all the selections in this mock. The next one for Indiana. Gary?
Norlander and I are on the same page here. I've got Indiana selecting Shaedon Sharpe, the never played guard from the University of Kentucky. There's a lot of questions here. This is a big swing. There is some inherent risk because we haven't really seen him, play high-stakes basketball. We've seen Jabari Smith in high-stakes games against comparable talent. Same for Paolo Banchero and Chet Holmgren and everybody else who has been selected in this mock draft so far. But with Shaedon Sharpe, he had an opportunity to play at Kentucky. He was eligible in the second semester. He and his people opted not to risk his draft stock and simply watch from the sidelines. That's not bothersome to me because I understand the motivation behind it, but it does make his evaluation a little harder to do because, we can all watch videos of grassroots games and, see clips from workouts, but some stuff you just can't know about somebody until you've seen them in high-stakes competitive basketball, and those are the questions that linger with Shaedon Sharpe right now.
No doubt about it. There's even a chance you might have seen Parrish and I in the background of those Peach Jam games from a year ago, because that's literally the last time we saw Shaedon Sharpe play, and he was tremendous. Now, Parrish said it, big swing. I'm taking a big swing here. I'm going to re-emphasize something about this whole procedure. There will be players, I promise you, there will be players drafted lower on draft night who 2 years, 4 years, 6 years down the road, it's going to look silly in retrospect, but we can't tell the future. With Shaedon Sharpe, I'm going to take a swing. He has actually not even had a blow-you-away workout run going into this draft. Some of them have been a little bit underwhelming, but there are still plenty of believers. The explosiveness can be there, the shooting, the offensive acumen. We'll wait and see on the defensive side, but I'm going to push my chips in on Shaedon Sharpe, the player I saw with my own eyes in person a year ago. I wish he had played at Kentucky. There is a belief out there among some NBA scouts that had Shaedon Sharpe played at Kentucky and been what we thought he could be, he would be in the conversation to go number one. He's not. He's not. In fact, I've got him higher than just about anyone. But given his skill set and how physically mature he is at this age, plus his age, relatively speaking, he will be picked on potential and the fact that he is just, 18 going on 19 here. I love him in this spot where GP has him. I think he'll be a top 5 prospect when we look years down the road.
You have him number 3 on your big board. Gary takes him 6th in the mock. His over-under draft position is 7.5. The Blazers picking at 7. Gary?
I've got him selecting Benedict Mathurin out of Arizona. So this is another one where Norlander and I have the best availables coming off in the same order. Mathurin's a guy that, as I really started diving into the tape, as we were prepping for the NBA draft, I liked him more than I previously did, and I always liked him. We're talking about a Pac-12 Player of the Year who's a 6'6" athlete who can also reliably shoot three-pointers. Was just a tad under 40% on a pretty decent number of attempts per game. So, this is a guy who checks a lot of boxes for what is valued in the NBA right now. Switchable wings who can guard multiple positions and then comfortably knock down shots from the perimeter. He can do those things. He's shown that at Arizona, and I think he's going to be able to show that pretty quickly, once he arrives in the NBA. And I can't imagine him slipping much further than where we have him going right here.
Yeah, without a doubt. I've got him ranked top 5. If he were to go to Portland, there's always this wonderment, will Damian Lillard be a Blazer for life? And if Mathurin's going to go there, is he going to be the player to convince Dame to, finish out his career there? But Mathurin, he is magnetically drawn to the rim. He plays with a ferociousness that I love, a constant aggressiveness, good distributor, a good, just solid, we've got him listed as a shooting guard here, which he is, but he is a power wing with good size, really nice passer. Overall, I think he's got a package defensively that validates him for me as a top 5 prospect. And because he's a wing, again, you look at my top overall prospects there and you're kind of thinking man, Norlander doesn't have Chet Holmgren even top 4. I just think it's going to be inevitable with where the NBA is going, guys, that we will look back on this draft and at least 2 players are going to pass at least one of those bigs. And so I am betting on Shaedon Sharpe and Benedict Mathurin to be the 2 most likely players that wind up with the better careers down the road. But that, top 5 is top 5. They're all good, and I really love this. If Mathurin went to Portland, Chris, I think that would be a phenomenal fit alongside Damian Lillard.
Up at 8, the New Orleans Pelicans, and Gary has them taking A.J. Griffin, whose over-under draft position is 11.5. So this might seem like a little bit of a stretch, but no. Matt, you like him even more than that. He's, I think, number 7 on your big board.
Yeah, and that 11.5 number kind of surprises me because I've heard buzz that, A.J. Griffin, maybe there might be a team, who knows, with Indiana at 6 or Portland at 7. They might just be sitting there thinking no, we're not going to waste a pick on a different player that doesn't have nearly the shooting capability of A.J. Griffin. Now, A.J. Griffin is a powerful, ultra high-scoring wing if he wants to get there. He's had some injury concerns. Defensively, bafflingly mediocre. He should be a much better defender than he proved to be at Duke. He has to improve on that range. In fact, the fact that he's not a top 5 guy is because he's been that bad on defense there. But yes, great shooter, really good form, catch and shoot off the dribble, has been a player that we've known about for a while because he's been a highly rated prospect, and his dad formerly played in the NBA, now coaches in the NBA. But I am in on A.J. Griffin as a clear-cut, no doubt about it, top 10 talent in this year's draft.
Okay, the Spurs are coming up at number 9, and Gary, it's a guy who played in your neck of the woods in Memphis.
Jalen Duren, the one-and-done prospect for Penny Hardaway's Tigers. Honestly, Hassel, this comes down to what do you feel about guys who aren't perfectly suited to be centers in the modern NBA? If you can appreciate a rim protector, a physical specimen, but somebody who is going to, at best, just be okay, good at guarding in space, and at worst, be somebody who gets cooked over and over again, then you're a little less enthusiastic about this. I mean, the things Duren can do, you're seeing it there, aren't hard to spot. He's a great rim runner, rips rims down, can alter shots, block shots, is a good enough rebounder. But there are some concerns. He's got a skill set where he can play a little bit away from the rim, but I'm not optimistic that he'll ever stretch it all the way out to the three-point line, which is obviously preferable with modern centers in today's NBA. So if you're somebody who has devalued that position, you probably don't touch him with the 9th pick. But if you can appreciate what he does and seems capable of doing, then this makes a lot of sense for San Antonio.
All right, the Wizards are up at 10, and you can certainly appreciate the building blocks that Ochai Agbaji put together for Bill Self at Kansas over the years, a 4-year career. And his over-under is somewhere in the low teens. But, Matt, you also have him as a top 10 player in this draft.
Parrish and I agree on this. Avid listeners of Eye on College Basketball know this is no surprise. We both think that Ochai Agbaji is a top 10 prospect and will prove to be a top 10 player in this year's draft class. How about this old school flavor? 4-year college player, won a national championship. Let's put him in the top 10. He also has ascended each year, improved his numbers. Three-point shooting got better every single year. His free throw rate got better every single year. His ability to be a well-rounded, confident player got better every single year. I talked to Bill Self multiple times this past season, and the one thing he wanted from Agbaji, like by the time of his end of his sophomore season, is more command on the court, more confidence in himself. He finally got there. Love it. I don't know if he'll ever be an all-star. I don't think he will. I just think he's going to be a starting level player more years than not in the NBA, and he's not undervalued here on this mock draft show, but I think at the next level, he's going to wind up going 3, 6, 8 spots too late.
That's all college players in the top 10, though there's a little caveat with Shaedon Sharpe because he did not play for the Kentucky Wildcats. The Knicks are coming up at number 11, Gary.
Yeah, I've got him taking Johnny Davis out of Wisconsin. He is probably the biggest breakthrough player of this past college basketball season. I mean, Keegan Murray obviously helped himself a lot. Ochai Agbaji helped himself a lot. But those guys were already on NBA radars before the season began. Johnny Davis wasn't. I mean, we did a list of the top 101 college basketball players heading into the season. Not only did we not have Johnny Davis on it, his name never came up, nor should it have come up. And so for him to, have the season he had, incredibly productive at Wisconsin, was really eye-opening. He's got good size for a guard. He can shot create as well as anybody in this draft. The three-point percentage is problematic. You got to hope that gets better, or else he's not worthy of going this high in this draft. But I'm going to trust that that'll improve enough where all the other stuff, when you combine it, you've got somebody that is clearly a lottery talent.
Yeah, quick on this. Johnny Davis was 30.6% from three-point range. I've got him lower. GP, what he's doing here is accurate and a reflection of reality of where he'll get picked. I'm just trying to tell you where I think he'll land in the hierarchy. I've got him 20th overall on my big board because I don't think he'll have near the green light or autonomy he had at Wisconsin. I think the gap between college to the NBA for him will be a little bit tougher to scale than other guys there. So I could wind up being wrong, but I'm trying to find spots where, because not every guy that goes top 12 is going to be a top 12 player. And I think Davis might find a little more struggles down the road. He did well for himself, made the right decision coming out, but I don't see him as big of a long-term play as some other guys that I have listed ahead of him.
All right, fellas, let's get the second pick for the Oklahoma City Thunder, who Gary had them taking Jabari Smith at number 2. How about number 12, Gary?
I've got him taking Dyson Daniels. So we go non-college player here, somebody who starred for the G League Ignite. He's a 6'8" perimeter-oriented player who can play with the ball, play without the ball. Obviously, the three-point percentage is not something that you'd focus on as a positive. Shot below 26% from 3. That's the swing skill. You see him missing there. He's got to be better at that. But if he gets better at that, you've got a really dynamic talent and somebody that is worthy of consideration here for an Oklahoma City franchise that is still very much rebuilding.
And this is a guy who right now has an over-under draft position of 6.5. So he might be going higher than that. Dyson Daniels out of the G League. All right, let's move on to the Hornets, who have the 13th and 15th picks. And Gary is having them take Mark Williams here, one of 3 lottery picks from the Duke Blue Devils. And Matt, one of 3 Duke Blue Devils in your top 10.
I love Mark Williams. I have him as the 9th overall prospect on my big board here. And sometimes there needs to be something said for guys that can be really great in one specific area and having widespread impact a result of that talent. And Mark Williams is that. I think he is destined to be one of the best defensive centers in the NBA by the end of his first contract. Great length, great instinct, big hands, soft hands, good distributor. Offensively, Is he going to be a guy that you're asking to step out and shoot from 20 or 23 feet? No, but I don't care. I trust what my eyes saw and what Mike Krzyzewski trusted from Mark Williams the entire season. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in the ACC and really one of the 3 or 4 best in the entire country. I love him at the next level in an albeit structured, kind of place it in a box role. But for me and what he can actually do and impact a team overall, top 10 prospects as far as I'm concerned.
Let's close out the lottery here, Gary, with the Cavs at number 14.
I've got him staying in-state and selecting Ohio State star Malachi Branham. He's a 6'6" guard who shot above 40% from 3. Like I've noted multiple times already, those guys are super valuable in the NBA. So Cleveland, as long as, Branham's still on the board, they don't have to look far, to identify a guy who could help that roster as soon as next season. They need more playmaking in the backcourt. He could provide it.
All right, so the lottery has been picked by Gary Parrish as we run through his mock draft, and Matt Norlander has been ranking the prospects as well. Gary had Chet Holmgren going number 1, though Norlander has him number 5 on his big board. Then it's Jabari Smith 2, Paolo Banchero 3, Ivy and Murray round out the top 5. Going to the right-hand side and into the double digits, Ochai Agbaji going to the Wizards at 10, Johnny Davis to the Knicks at 11, and finally a non-college player at number 12, Dyson Daniels to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who also took Smith at 2.
Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ, getting you ready for the NBA draft going down on Thursday. So we're kind of doing one of two things at the same time. We are going through Gary Parrish's latest mock draft. You see his lottery picks there. Chet Holmgren, no surprise, going number 1 overall. Jabari Smith, number 2, followed up by Paolo Banchero. But at the same time, as we are going through Gary Parrish's latest mock draft, we are also taking a look at Matt Norlander's big board, his best available. Here is what he has left as we work our way through Gary Parrish's mock draft. By the top, we have E.J. Liddell and then Jeremy Sohan, followed by Patrick Baldwin Jr. So will they go in that order when it comes to Parrish's latest mock? Let's welcome back in the guys here behind the guys behind, I should say, the Eye on College Basketball podcast. This is a true Monday for me. We have Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish here. Let's go to the Hornets at 15. Gary has them taking Baylor's Jeremy Sohan. Matt, in some of our mocks, I've seen him go as high as 6. In some of them, he is Polish-American. He's got a great personality and great hair to go with it.
Wonderful, and what a prospect Jeremy Sohan is. I think he's got a wide range of potential outcomes for his career, but yes, I evaluate him as a top 12 level kind of guy. He can truly, if you played an NBA game tonight and put him in a uniform, he can guard minimally 1 through 4 at this stage, and there are people that believe he will be a versatile 1 through 5 kind of defender, true positionless kind of guy. Offensively, there are still things like how he plugs in. It might wind up being a team fit overall, but he's sort of irresistible. His battery is always at full, incredible feet, switchable, reads pick and roll defenses, as well as pretty much almost anyone in this draft. So I just don't see how he's going to fall much further than where we have him here in this mock, because guys that can immediately step in and make a defensive impact at the NBA level and have his length, they're hard to pass up in the lottery.
Let's go to the Hawks at 16. Gary, you have them taking Jalen Williams, and I feel like we're going to hear this over and over. Would become the first player from Santa Clara drafted since Steve Nash in 1996, who went 15th overall. Why do you have him here?
This is a guy who helped himself so much in the pre-draft process by conducting impressive workouts that it really forced front office people to go back and look at the tape. And what they saw was a 6'6" guard who shot nearly 40% from three-point range and does a lot of things that are desirable at the NBA level. And so this is not somebody that we spent a lot of time talking about throughout the season, because though Santa Clara was good, it was the third place team in the West Coast Conference. But if you are talking about guys who have helped themselves as much as anybody from the end of the season to this moment, Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara is probably that guy. I'm not certain he was even the most desirable Jalen Williams as a prospect when the season ended. That might have been the Jalen Williams from Arkansas, but now there's no question he's going to go in the first round.
Yeah, I spoke with Jalen Williams and Santa Clara's coaches. I have an in-depth feature on him at CBSSports.com that we published recently. His story is completely fascinating to me. GP laid out a lot of it, but just how you go from being like a pretty good WCC player, maybe kind of prospect, to surefire top 20 pick. I love those kind of stories and trying to figure out how that actually happens. He's got tremendous length. He was phenomenal at the combine. How about this? Real quick anecdote for you. What so often will happen, especially with mid-major players, is they'll get their measurements from the teams, and the teams will send them to NBA personnel, and then the NBA personnel will not believe them because a guy who's 6'10 is actually 6'8. A guy with a 7'1 wingspan eventually has a 6'11 wingspan. Jalen Williams goes to the combine. They tell him, listen, this guy's got like a near 7'3 wingspan. No one believes him. They measure him 12 times to make sure, and every single time it was just as Santa Clara told them it would be there. Incredible physical specimen. He's got a great shot at sticking a long time because he is an ideal NBA wing and maybe the best story in this draft.
12 times just to believe them there. Let's go to the Rockets at 17. Gary, their second pick in the first round. Who do you have them taking?
I've got him taking Ousmane Dieng out of France, who played this past season for the New Zealand Breakers. So he's already a professional basketball player in a legitimate professional basketball league. You know, he's your typical 6'9" wing who's got a chance to slide over to the 4, you know, once he adds some weight and some strength. You know, he's more of a project than a sure thing, more of a help you in 3 years than help you right now type of guy. But you know, this Houston franchise is in a total rebuild, and the goal is, you know, really just to add interesting, dynamic, could be great pieces, as many as possible. And I think Dieng certainly checks that box as a candidate for that.
Let's look at the Bulls with the 18th overall pick. As of right now, it looks like the Bulls are going to be able to hang on to Zach LaVine. Gary has them taking Walker Kessler. This is just a couple spots lower, Matt, than where you have him. So what do you think about Walker Kessler?
Oh, I love this spot. I'm just high on Kessler because I think that he has the athleticism, the size, really had a claim to being the best defensive player in college basketball for much of last season there. And he's got good shooting touch. To me, Walker Kessler comfortably projects as a longtime starter in the NBA at the center position. Like he's a mix of new age, big, and traditional 5 in a way where I just don't think that guy ever really gets to become a dinosaur at the NBA level. And just great instincts. We've talked about some guys who had breakout years. Credit to my man, GP. At the start of last college season, he told you that Walker Kessler, by way of North Carolina, was going to be the breakout player in college basketball. Really, Keegan Murray and Johnny Davis took that mantle, but Kessler was third. GP was right on the money with that. And now I've got him as a top 15 prospect in this year's draft.
Yeah, I like Kessler a lot as well. I am concerned about the way the game is played at the NBA level, you know, whether he'll get played off the floor and struggle to guard in space. There was some problems with that at Auburn this past season, but you know, he's an undeniable rim protector. I think he can stretch it out all the way to the three-point line, and for those reasons and more, I think going somewhere in the top 20 is sensible.
Let's look at the Timberwolves at 19, and this is exactly where Matt has Ty Washington as well, coming in at 19 on his big board. 5-time SEC Freshman of the Week. Gary, why do you like him here at 19 to the Timberwolves?
You know, he showed so much early in the season there where people were talking about him as a possible lottery pick, and then he suffered ankle injuries, and he was just bothered much of the rest of the season. You didn't hear him complain too much, but he wasn't the same player. Still, he showed enough before those injuries crept up to justify him going in the top 20. He's a guard with some good size. You know, Kennedy Chandler is also a point guard out of the SEC, but he's about 3 inches shorter than Ty Washington. And ultimately, though that wouldn't be a difference maker for me necessarily, I think it is going to be a difference maker for NBA franchises, and probably the reason Ty is, at this point in this mock draft, the next point guard taken off the board.
We're getting to a stage of this draft where we're getting to players trying to project which way they're going to truly wind up is getting harder. Like, if you told me Ty Washington didn't really stick around in the NBA long term, I'd believe you. If you told me Ty Washington was actually a 12-year player, I'd believe you. I think he's got a pretty wide range. A really nice mid-range shooter, can create off the bounce. To me, it will be a lot about fit. And I could see him, where GP has him here, I could see him thriving in this exact situation with this franchise overall. We'll see if that winds up, in fact, being where he goes on Thursday night.
Let's look at the Spurs coming in at number 20 here. They have 3 first-round picks, so they've already had one go off the board. Gary, who do you like at 20?
At some point in every draft, you get an opportunity to buy low on a prospect. Somebody who a year earlier would have been a top 10 pick, certainly lottery pick, but because the past year hasn't been great for any number of reasons, they're available, all the way down at a place like 20th. And for me, this year, that guy is Jaden Hardy. Did not play in college, played for the G League Ignite, and scored the way you would expect him to if you saw him at all throughout his high school days, but really didn't shoot it well from three. The percentage was bad. Now, some people will tell you that a lot of that is shot selection. It's hard to make bad shots unless you're Steph Curry. Jaden Hardy is not Steph Curry, but this is a guy whose skill set as a scorer is undeniable, and if you could get him in a franchise like San Antonio where the culture is so strong, you could really be getting a top 10 talent, with the 20th pick in this draft.
Let's look at the Nuggets coming in at number 21. Matt, I'll start with you here. Gary has him taking Blake Wesley out of Notre Dame. Do you agree with him going around this spot?
I actually do not. So Blake Wesley is not a player that I have ranked that high. I don't have him on as a first-round grade, and that's just because he's got a nice collection of skills. I just don't think those skills actually amount to a shaped-up game yet. Like we like to talk about, like, that guy's in his bag right now. Like, to me, Blake Wesley, from an NBA perspective, is still like putting together the swatches of the actual fabric to build his bag. He's got good potential. I think he can be a pretty good defender. I think his defense is actually why he is. I'm against the grain here. Blake Wesley has a really good shot at being a first-round pick. I'm just not grading him as a first-round talent. I don't think it'll bear out there. But, hey, that's what we're doing this for, because we are going to have some disagreements there. He's got potential. And he has to go. He was good at Notre Dame, but to be clear, like, there was enough feedback where it's like, you might not be in the spot a year from now, so you better go and capitalize now. He's making the right decision by leaving.
Don't agree on everything. That is absolutely true. We'll see what unfolds Thursday. Let's go to the Grizzlies at 22 here. Gary, you have him going with Kennedy Chandler. He told Yahoo Sports this week, I'll be the next guard to prove everyone wrong. Why do you like him in this spot?
Well, first, let me say I agree with him. I think he's tremendous. This is a young man I've known for a long time. We share the same hometown of Memphis, and so I know Grizzlies fans would be thrilled if it went down this way. Memphis is probably about to lose its backup point guard, Tyus Jones, to free agency. So there's a need at that position, and Kennedy Chandler, he's been mentored by Ja Morant. Since he was in high school, they have a close relationship already. He's little, 6 foot tall. I acknowledge it. Chris Paul is also 6 foot tall. Jalen Brunson is 6'1". Fred VanVleet is 6'1". The idea that you can't be small and play in this league is not true. You can if you check a few boxes that Kennedy Chandler undeniably checks. He's a run-your-team point guard who's done nothing but win at every level and also can reliably make a perimeter shot. He's super quick. Chris Paul, Jalen Brunson, and Fred VanVleet were all drafted, or in VanVleet's case, not drafted at all. Not drafted where they should have been picked. Somebody's making the same mistake with Kennedy Chandler, and if he's there at 22 for Memphis, I can't turn in my card quickly enough.
I'm with Parrish on this. Sometimes, like, something becomes a talking point and it seems to get accepted for no reason whatsoever. And there's no reason why, just because Kennedy Chandler's 6 feet tall, he can't be a successful NBA player. That stuff kind of bothers me. But I will say this. If Kennedy Chandler was 6'3" and did the same exact things he did at Tennessee, all the stats were the same, he'd be a lottery pick. It's being held against him. I do have a first-round grade on him. I think he's got tempting potential. The size is going to be the thing that's going to wind up having him drop. But I won't be surprised. I don't have him as a top 15 grade, but I will not be surprised if he winds up getting there because he killed at the combine and consistently showed that he was one of the better point guards in the nation last year. Oh, by the way, he did that playing alongside Zakai Ziegler, who we could look up at in a year or two or three and say, look, they had another future pro in the backcourt with Kennedy Chandler. I do like its potential. He will be a great value wherever he's selected.
76ers on the clock at 23. Gary, you have them taking Tari Eason. His coach said this is a guy, I mean, first of all, he's a breakout star at LSU, but he said he doesn't have a chip on his shoulder. He has a boulder on his shoulder.
Yeah, there's a handful of guys like this in this draft who were very little thought of after the previous year of college, and then this past season just exploded onto the scene. And Tari Eason is a great example of that, alongside Johnny Davis and Keegan Murray and various others. Eason started his career at Cincinnati and was a whatever freshman, but transferred to LSU and became super productive. He's 6'8", explosive in transition, and can guard multiple positions. Those guys are desirable in the modern NBA, and somebody's going to get somebody who is ready to play immediately when they select Tari Eason, presumably in the first round of this draft.
All right, guys, hang on just a second here as we make our way to the end of the first round of Gary Parrish's latest mock draft. Let's take a look at who is left on Matt Norlander's best available still. E.J. Liddell sitting there. Matt has him at 10, Patrick Baldwin Jr. at 13. Neither one of them have gone in Gary Parrish's mock draft. We'll see if we see them 24 through 30 next. Welcome back into CBS Sports HQ, presented by Jeep Grand Cherokee. They are taking a look at Gary Parrish's latest mock draft as we get ready for the NBA draft coming up on Thursday. There, pretty much in every single one of our mock drafts, we've had Chet Holmgren going across the board, although Jabari Smith is the favorite. And while we are doing this, we are also taking a look at Matt Norlander's big board. So far, a lot of agreement between the guys as we take a look at who Gary has going 15 through 23 here. They agree toward the top of those, but when it comes to the bottom, like Tari Eason going to 76ers at 23. That is somebody that Matt does not even have in the top 30. So who is available still when it comes to Matt Norlander's big board? Well, a couple guys, he had his lottery picks there in E.J. Liddell and Patrick Baldwin Jr. At 10 and 13 for his rankings. So far, they have not appeared in Gary Parrish's mock draft. So let's welcome back Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander here. Let's go to the Bucks at 24. And my, oh my, who do we have but E.J. Liddell finally making his appearance here. Matt, how disappointed are you that he's so far down this list?
Well, I'm not disappointed. Again, Parrish is mocking out trying to predict team behavior. Now, I think Liddell dropping below 24 would be surprising to me. I think his ceiling on draft night is around 16 or 17. I did a deep dive feature on E.J. Liddell as well. The name, I almost feel like this is becoming groupthink, but the name that started to attach itself to E.J. Liddell for comparison, this is like 6-7 weeks ago, was Grant Williams. And then the Celtics made it all the way to the finals, and Grant Williams had some really nice showings and performances. I think that might wind up helping E.J. Liddell's stock. Super smart player, was bad a year ago at the pre-draft process. They told him, you're too heavy, you got to work on your shot, get better defensively. He cleaned shop at Ohio State. Every single thing that they said he was not good enough to get drafted on last year, he got good enough. He is a sleeper for me. I have him, you saw my big board. He shouldn't be taken 10 on draft night under the idea that he's like a top 10 player right now. I think he is going to be a long-term NBA player, a starter for 7, 8, 9 years potentially, and super smart, super reliable. Also, the real scouting report, he's obsessed with Marvel movies, and he gave me his all-time ranking listing. Ant-Man and the Wasp is this dude's favorite Marvel movie, which is a red flag for some, but he's like me, he's kind of going against the grain with that, so I respect him all the more.
Look, I've seen like 3 Marvel movies, and that was one of the only ones I saw in theater, so I also agree with it just because, like I said, it's one of the only ones I saw in the theater. Let's go to the Spurs here at 25. Gary, who do you have him taking here?
I've got him taking Christian Braun out of Kansas. He's a national champion, a 6'6", 6'7" wing who's a good athlete and shot nearly 40% from 3. And so, Amanda, you might notice a trend here when it comes to my mock draft / big board, what I value among the players who are available. And switchable wings who can reliably knock down shots are they've never been more needed in the NBA. You can't have too many of them. And I genuinely believe Christian Braun is going to be one of those guys that sticks around in the league for a long time. In fact, earlier we did an episode of the Eye on College Basketball podcast, and the question was, who is somebody projected out of our consensus top 30 that you think will still be in the NBA in 8 years? Because that's a hard thing to do. And my pick was Christian Braun. I'm really high on him.
Rockets with the 26th overall pick. Matt, Gary has them taking Dalen Terry. I was checking out your mock draft on CBSSports.com, and I don't see him on there.
He's not on there. He's my 3rd favorite Arizona prospect. Christian Koloko is my 2nd favorite. I do love him as a top 25 overall prospect in this draft. But as for Terry, good chance he'll be drafted in the first round. Quality shooter, quality passer. The reason why he could be a first-round pick is his defensive adroitness. No doubt about it. He showed a lot of capability, a lot of length, and he can certainly move about the floor on that end of the court. That's why he's got a chance to go in the first round here. It's really kind of pick your style, if you will. To me, Koloko's got a higher ceiling defensively. I'd go with him, but Terry's got a bit more buzz right now. Koloko's he's not a stretch 5. But overall, like, it's certainly a reasonable pick from GP there, and that reflects probably close to what his actual range is on draft night.
Heat with the 27th overall pick. Gary, you're looking outside of college and going to the G League.
Yeah, Marshawn Beauchamp, who is probably going to be the third first-round pick from the G League Ignite. So they don't have prospects as heralded as Jalen Green or Jonathan Kuminga like they did in the previous draft, but this is a 6'6 guard with a 6'11 wingspan, plays with an incredible motor, averaged about 15 points per game. This is a bit of an upside pick, but you see the athleticism there. That's the type of stuff NBA front offices are looking for.
The Warriors with the 28th overall pick. Gary Parrish has them taking Caleb Houston out of Michigan. He's one of the youngest players in this draft. He turned just 19 a couple months ago. Matt, you have him going quite a bit higher here. So what do you think about this?
Well, yeah, listen, we are talking about a Warriors late first-round draft pick. Parrish and I have a history when it comes to these kind of guys, Jordan Poole, so we need to maybe speak carefully on this. But I'll be honest here, GP. It's a bit vexing because, Michigan wanted him to come back, hone his skills, improve his draft stock, become a better player. And there's people around the league that aren't exactly all in on Caleb Houston and where he is now. So it's a little bit of a project play. I don't have a top 40 grade on him overall. I don't see it in the projection, and I didn't see it on the tape. But he's going. I think he could have returned and been like a top 25 player in college basketball, period. This is the one you have in your first round where I understand why you did it. I'm not going to be able to be sold on Houston as a first round talent in this year's crop. That's all.
Full disclosure, I didn't have him in my initial mock draft as a top 30 prospect, but because of the way he handled the NBA draft combine, decided not to go. There's some thought in NBA circles that he got a promise from somebody at the bottom of the first round. I wouldn't have promised him at the bottom of the first round. I'm not sure that Golden State promised him at the bottom of the first round, but he is somebody, like some others we've talked about before. A year ago, clearly a lottery pick projection. Now you can probably get him at the bottom of the first round. And, if you're trying to take a big swing on somebody who, if not for an up and down freshman season, would have been picked a lot higher, then this is a guy who qualifies for that.
Let's go back to the Grizzlies here with the 29th overall picks. Gary, Matt said you vexed him with your last pick there. Who do you have going to the Grizzlies at 29?
Kendall Brown out of Baylor, who was a lot like Caleb Houston, not as a player, but in the sense that he was a projected top 10 pick coming out of high school who really didn't have a great freshman season. Obviously, the Grizzlies aren't worried about drafting players who had bad freshman seasons because they took Zaire Williams, who was terrible in his one season at Stanford, with the 10th pick in last year's draft. And that, has worked out okay. Zaire Williams started games for a team that won as more games than anybody else in the NBA outside of the Phoenix Suns in the regular season. The Grizzlies have so many young pieces and really good pieces that they can afford to take a big swing at the bottom of the first round. And so the two guys I would look at here are Kendall Brown and Patrick Baldwin Jr. For the exact same reasons, because they're guys who were top 10 five-star prospects who just, weren't very good in college. But if you can tap into that talent potential that earned their reputations, then you got real value at this point in the draft.
Let's finish it off with the Nuggets there at 30. Gary, we had Tim Doyle on a couple days ago. He had this particular player going to the Nuggets at 21. So Nuggets overall, and it only feels fitting that we find Nikola Jovic going to the Nuggets here at 30.
Yes, he is not the reigning MVP, nor is he of any relation to the reigning MVP. These are two different guys, but trust me, it's going to get confusing for some people. This is a total upside pick, and honestly lower than most people have him going. He's somebody I feel like needs to be projected in the first round because it seems pretty clear he's going to go in the first round. But really, you're talking about a long and skilled forward who your betting can develop in ways that turn him into a legitimate NBA player. He's not ready, I don't think, to come in and play major minutes for a franchise like Denver from the start, but you hope, at least in theory, that he gets there fairly quickly.
Matt, taking a look at your best available, when we went 24 through 30, there were two guys that were very high on your list, E.J. Liddell, Patrick Baldwin Jr. E.J. Liddell made it in. Pat Baldwin Jr. did not into Gary Parrish's mock draft. Give us your outlook for him.
Sure, real quick, because I just did another feature on Baldwin. Those are Baldwin, Liddell, and then Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara, the guys I did three kind of in-depth features on for CBSSports.com. And I talked with Patrick Baldwin Jr. recently. His camp believes he's going to be taken in the first round. There are people in the NBA that think he actually will be dropping to the second round. It is a major plot point. It kind of resembles what happened with Michael Porter Jr. a few years ago. Now, Porter dropped from thinking that he would go from 4 to 7 down to 14, but it was a significant slide on draft night. He was taken off of some people's boards. Baldwin has a similar profile. Former #1 prospect, 6'10", with size, can shoot. This is another chips all in situation with me, Amanda. I think he's got the size and the capability to get there, and he had such a tough year. In fact, just one quick personal note, because the family went on record with it, and they really weren't public with this in the past year, but his mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and they didn't even tell him until the middle of last summer. So on top of trying to rehab an ankle injury that took him out his entire senior year, he's dealing with all of that, playing for his father, who's on the hot seat. There were so many factors that went into his bad season at Milwaukee. I almost feel like getting into a new situation, into an NBA franchise, it will set him up for success. I don't think he'll be an immediate hit, but I do believe we will look up 4 or 5 years from now, and Patrick Baldwin Jr. will be a top 15 talent from this year's draft class.
Matt Norlander, Gary Parrish, we appreciate it. A wealth of knowledge, one of the most entertaining duos we have here at CBS Sports. Thank you guys so much. Let's recap as we went through Gary Parrish's latest mock draft there. He's going with Chet Holmgren as the first overall pick, although it is Jabari Smith who is still the betting favorite at -180. Chet Holmgren is +145. Taking a look at 15 through 30 here, if you would like to see Gary Parrish's full mock draft as well as Matt Norlander's, they are both on CBSSports.com. Matt Norlander, Gary Parrish, the dynamic duo behind the Eye on College Basketball podcast. Latest episode, it hit today, the 2022 NBA Draft Special. 5 big questions and their favorite first and second round sleepers. Make sure to download and follow. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.